I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. The Oscar nominations just happened. I gave my live reactions, but we're not going anywhere. Again, Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, we have another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown, and will up until the Oscar has actually happened, and even after the Oscars, because now we're moving away from nominations into predictions. What's going to happen at the Oscars now that we have our nominations? You can check out my video in terms of how I ended up doing. I was very happy with kind of my performance. Top 1% on Gold Derby, top 2% on Awards Expert. We did very well, and that's because of all the work that we did over the past few months here, and actually on our 10th season of Old's Oscar Countdown. But we're not going anywhere. We're transitioning now. Now we have to predict who's going to win. Some of the categories are a little bit more obvious than others, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. 5 guaranteed winners, so that you don't have to worry about these categories. You don't have to overthink them and try to figure out some of the tougher categories that has some actual competition. But if you're new to the channel, welcome. Like I mentioned, we've been doing this now on our 10th season, predicting the Oscars very accurately. You can check out my Oscar nominations predictions video and then my reactions. We did very well, as I mentioned. So now we're going to try to predict the Oscars, and it's going to be less of a structure in terms of the videos. There's going to be a lot of reaction videos once we have some of these industry awards that come out, whether they be BAFTA or SAG or DGA. But in these next couple of weeks, I essentially want to do a couple of sister episodes that I've been doing the past few years. The first one here being 5 kind of guaranteed winners, 5 categories that I'm very confident in. And then the other video will be 5 categories that I think are most up in the air, the ones that you should pay attention to and really think about. And I do this because even if it's very obvious to some of you, I think it's helpful to understand which categories do I need to worry about and which categories do I not need to worry about. Which categories do I have to think about in terms of the possibilities, and ones where actually overthinking them probably doesn't help. That's what this video is ultimately for. And if you want to hear my thoughts on an individual category, I have the timestamps in the description below to check that out. And as always, love to hear your thoughts if you disagree with any of my picks, or if you have some other maybe guaranteed locks that I haven't mentioned in this video. Please feel free to leave that in the comments down below. I really do enjoy reading them and seeing what you guys think. So without further ado, let's jump into things, starting off with my first guaranteed winner, which is that Jessie Buckley is going to win Best Actress. This is something that I felt ever since seeing the film back at TIFF in September, where it won the People's Choice Award winner there. And over the past couple of years we've been doing this video, I always like to pick an acting category. So we predicted Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers to win. She won. We predicted Kieran Culkin to win. He won. And now I'm placing my bets on Jessie Buckley, because of the 4 acting categories, this is the most likely. Now, is it 100% guaranteed? Of course not. There could be some definite surprises at BAFTA or at the Actors Awards, but how things are kind of shaping up early on in this race right now, it does seem to be Jessie Buckley's to lose. And it's really from every angle. Really, there's a 3-pronged argument. The first part, of course, is her performance. She is excellent in the film. She is in almost every frame of the film. The range that she shows, I think, is very impressive, going from caring and gentle to being in love to grieving to being super emotional to being inspired. There is this gamut of emotions that she's able to portray within the film. So it just allows her to show off her great range that I think not only actors will appreciate, but other members of the Academy. This is maybe a movie that didn't totally perform to its high expectations in terms of nominations. It did disappoint in a couple of categories. That being said, it still got in for Best Picture, for Best Director, for a bunch of technical categories. So it does have broad support. And I do think it's also going to be a movie that does very well at the BAFTAs. So the fact that, the first part of that argument, the fact that her performance is so strong. The second part then being, I would say, her narrative. This is something that I've kind of moved away from in recent years, just because the Academy is so big. It's less reliant on some of these narratives, but sometimes that happens. Someone like a Jessie Buckley, for example, has never won before. And I think that's somewhat of a strong narrative, where she has a couple of really great performances. She's been even nominated before at the Academy. And now she's this young actress who's really kind of defined herself as an A-list a movie star or big actress and gives a terrific performance. And now she's kind of, I think, elevated herself into an elite status. And it makes sense for this type of a person in terms of having a bunch of small, great performances and then finally has this really great opportunity to lead a film and showcase her full gamut and range of emotions and does so beautifully. So a true leading performance from a young, exciting actress. The narrative, the wanting to kind of reward someone like this is on her side as well. And then the third part is her somewhat weaker competition, just from a historical point of view. If you look at her other the people that she's nominated with, you have someone like a Kate Hudson and a Rose Byrne. Both of those actresses are from the only nominee from their movie, so they're sole nominees, and that's not a great sign for this category. 8 out of the last 10 winners, the Best Actress winner, was also nominated their film for Best Picture. So that hurts from the fact that Kate Hudson and Rose Byrne, their movies are not nominated for Best Picture. And that's 8 out of the last 10 years. And the other 2 winners, they weren't sole nominees either. They just didn't have their movies nominated for Best Picture. It was Jessica Chastain in Eyes of Tammy Faye and Renee Zellweger in Judy. And both of those actresses had their films nominated for Best Makeup. So they weren't even sole nominees themselves. So the fact of the matter is, from a historical point of view, Rose Byrne and Kate Hudson have to overcome a lot. And that's not to say that someone like Jessie Buckley has already won Critics' Choice and also won at the Golden Globes. So you'd have to kind of overcome some big historical challenges if either of them were to win. And then the other 2 competitors, Emma Stone is a 2-time winner, so there may be not a need to go out and immediately reward her in a movie that's not as well liked as Jessie's. In the same way, I would say Renate Runza in Sentimental Value is not as much of a true leading performance as compared to Jessie Buckley. She's not in as much of the film. She definitely recedes in the second half of the movie, whereas Jessie Buckley in Hamnet is in it for most of the movie. Their movies, I think, are very similar in terms of their appreciation, and the difference just being that Jessie Buckley is a past nominee where Renata isn't. They have that similar narrative of young actresses, exciting young actresses, except Jessie Buckley, I think, is just a step ahead because she is in a movie that's very similar in terms of Best Picture standings, 3 or 4 in that kind of ranking of potential winners, except she's been nominated before, except she's given a couple of other great performances that the Academy has recognized before, and now is kind of maybe fully ready, or Renata maybe 5 years from now will be in that same position as Jessie. Right now, she's just not. So you have a weaker competition that doesn't really have as much narrative or doesn't have the stats to back it, whereas Jessie Buckley pretty much has everything going for her. Feel very confident, even at this stage, that Jessie Buckley will win for Best Actress. Then the second category that I think it already has its winner is that I think One Battle After Another will win for Best Adapted Screenplay. This is a category that is primed to be One Battle After Another's win. Not only is the frontrunner to win right now for Best Picture, but I'm even more confident that Paul Thomas Anderson will win at least for this category. There is a possibility that One Battle doesn't win for Best Picture. I do think that is still a bit of a race between it and Sinners. I think there's even an outside chance that Paul Thomas Anderson loses for Best Director, but actually the category I'm most confident in is Best Adapted Screenplay, which is why it's showing up here. And for similar reasons to something like a Jessie Buckley for Hamnet, I think the competition is a little bit weaker. You could say the other competition would be something like Hamnet, but it did miss a couple of key categories. I think that movie right now is number 4 in the Best Picture rankings in terms of a potential win. It missed out on Paul Mescal. It missed out on something like cinematography or editing. So it doesn't have that broad support, whereas One Battle After Another got nominated in pretty much every branch, every part of the Academy. Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, is well regarded as a writer. There's a sense of creativity and uniqueness to telling this story and some of the funny lines that he has. Whereas a movie like Hamnet, which is still a well-liked movie, doesn't have those notable lines and moments of dialogue. It's all about the visuals and the music and the emotions of everything and the acting, rather than it is necessarily the script. Then you have the other competitors, whether it be Begonia or Train Dreams. These are just a weaker Best Picture contenders than One Battle After Another, so there wouldn't be a reason to give them the screenplay prize just because they like the movie more. I think of this 5, it's pretty clear that One Battle After Another is the most well-liked movie. And then you think about the script itself, whether it be that kind of unique structure or dialogue that Paul Thomas Anderson is so great at, or even just character names of at Beverly Hills. Will, I think, be largely well appreciated. Also think it's notable that this film won Best Screenplay at the Golden Globes. Not Best Original, not Best Adapted. They don't split that up. It won just Best Screenplay. And if this is truly the frontrunner to win for Best Picture, well, 7 out of the last 10 Best Picture winners also won a Screenplay prize. That's why I think Sinners is going to win for Best Original Screenplay. But in the Best Adapted Screenplay category, he's not competing with Sinners. He's not competing with Sentimental Value. They're in his kind of own little lane. The closest one would be Hamnet, which is not as strong of a Best Picture contender and doesn't have a really notable, unique script as compared to one battle after another. So it has this perfect combination of being a script forward kind of a film, I think, with unique dialogue and character names and creativity that the screenplay category usually rewards. And then it also has the fact that it's the frontrunner to win for Best Picture and has a bunch of people really liking the movie too. So lots of reasons for it. I think he's the kind of clear frontrunner right now for Best Adapted Screenplay. And something we didn't mention on the Jesse Buckley side of things for Hamnet, that's probably going to be its big win of the one of the acting categories or screenplay categories. They already kind of can put their love towards Jesse Buckley, so they may not feel the need to give Hamnet a runner-up prize in something like Best Adapted Screenplay, because they're already giving it kind of a big award, and that being Jesse Buckley. Then for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, I went with Frankenstein. I think that's going to be the winner on Oscar night. It has great odds on the betting sites, but that's not really why I did it. I did it from a math point of view, because as I mentioned many times over the past few years, we've been doing this now for 10 years, this category is not Best Makeup and Hairstyling. It's Best Prosthetics. It's which actor had the most prosthetics done that's also an Oscar-nominated actor. 7 out of the last 8 winners in this category, the actor that had the most makeup on that was also nominated had their film win for Best Makeup and Hairstyling. So in cases like Gary Oldman, he gets transformed into Darkest Hour, he wins for Best Actor. Guess what? Best Makeup is also won. But even still, when the actor doesn't win, as long as the actor is nominated, that helps. So Christian Bale, the next year in 2018 for Vice, he was nominated for Best Lead Actor. He didn't end up winning it, but Vice won for Best Makeup because of the transformation of one of the Oscar-nominated actors. So once again, it's math. 7 out of the last 8 years that happened. So let's look at the number of contenders here, and you go, all right, so we only have two films here in which one of the actors from their films are nominated for Best Acting this year. It's either Frankenstein or Sinners. The difference is Jacob Elordi is nominated, and he has the lion's share of the makeup, versus on the Sinners side of things, it's mostly, I would say, Jack O'Connell, who's not nominated at the Oscars. And that matters even more than the potential Best Picture consideration. We look at, I say, something like a 2022 year, where Brendan Fraser wins for Best Lead Actor and The Whale wins for Best Makeup, instead of Austin Butler winning and Elvis winning for Best Makeup. Even though Elvis was nominated for Best Picture and The Whale wasn't, it doesn't matter, because the stronger actor in that case, which was Brendan Fraser, ultimately won the category, and therefore The Whale won for makeup. So it has that connection, less so to nominations for Best Picture, but between the acting categories. And more importantly, is the kind of makeup that you're doing on that main actor, is that main actor then nominated for the Oscars? In this case, it's math. Jacob Elordi is, Jack O'Connell isn't. Therefore, it doesn't matter that I think Sinners is a stronger film than Frankenstein. Frankenstein has that acting connection, and really is, like I mentioned, who sat in the chair the longest. Apparently, Jacob Elordi had to sit in the chair for 11 hours, had to undergo this entire transformation, largely makeup, not a visual effects feat, notable when we see Frankenstein not nominated for visual effects. So I do think that with a potential win even for Jacob Elordi in Best Supporting Actor, the connection here really is strong over the past 8 years, and I'm not going to bet against it. Jacob Elordi had the most prosthetics done, sat in the longest number of hours in the chair, and is nominated for an Oscar for this film. Unlike some of the other contenders, they can't say the same. I think Frankenstein right now is a lock to win Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Then the fourth category I think is a lock, is that I think K-pop Demon Hunters will win Best Animated Feature. Probably will win Best Song for that matter, but the category we're ultimately going with is Best Animated Feature. And that's because the Oscars never fail to recognize phenomenons, whether that be Frozen in 2013 or Coco in 2017 or Shrek in 2001. When a movie kind of breaks the wider sense of just an animated film and enters into the culture, where adults and children are watching the film, where it does both critically well liked and then commercially, in this case, very well streamed on Netflix, and becomes a phenomenon, the Oscars almost always want to recognize that. Sometimes they'll go with the kind of indie movie we've seen in recent years, whether that be The Boy and the Heron or Flow. But usually we get key indicators of that, or maybe a clear number two indicator. So Flow or The Boy and the Heron will win at the Golden Globes. That didn't happen for K-pop Demon Hunters. And the reason why I included this category, even though you may think it's obvious, is because K-pop Demon Hunters is not nominated at BAFTA. So some people, when, Arco, let's say, wins at BAFTA, they'll be, really into Arco and go, hold on, maybe K-pop Demon Hunters, maybe it's not the frontrunner that we think it is. Now, it's not eligible at BAFTA, which is why it wasn't nominated there. It wasn't like it was snubbed. So I'm trying to be proactive and get in front of that kind of potential thinking of, who knows, maybe it's going to be the indie movie. Because we don't know, ultimately, at the end of the day. I think it was notable that Little Amelie did very well at the Annie Awards. So maybe from American Academy member voters, their favorite indie animated movie of the year is Little Amelie, versus maybe more international voters appreciate the French work on Arco. The point there being, though, is that there's a split in the support. Last year, Flow was the clear number two. The year before that, The Boy and the Heron was the clear number two. This year, the kind of indie pick that usually gets teed off in the Golden Globes, which didn't this year, there isn't even a clear number two. It could be Little Amelie, it could be Arco, we don't know. Then the other contenders, Elio has won Nowhere and is a Pixar movie that's only kind of mildly liked. I think it's just nominated because it's appreciated as an original Pixar film. And then Zootopia 2, which was well liked and did very well at box office, so you could argue that that's a phenomenon. The issue, this Academy doesn't like sequels. Toy Story is the only animated sequel to ever get wins for Best Animated Feature Film. And part of that, I think, is the fact that Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2 weren't nominated for the Oscars because there wasn't a category yet. So it felt okay to reward 3 or 4 because they hadn't really appreciated the other Toy Story films before. But we've had big, like Zootopia 2, big Disney movies that were critically well liked, that made a lot of money at the box office, not ultimately win. Whether that be Incredibles 2, or whether that be Inside Out 2, whether that be Across the Spider-Verse. For some reason, the Academy does not like sequels for animated films. They've already rewarded the Zootopia franchise with the first one for Best Animated Feature. Are they really going to go again for the sequel when they haven't done it for any other sequel in recent years, and actually not go with the big phenomenon in K-pop Demon Hunters that it is? I also think it's going to win for Best Original Song, so I do think it's going to have that similar connection to whether that be Frozen, the first Frozen, or Coco. The Best Animated Feature Song combination is a powerful one that we've seen in past years, and truthfully, the Academy just hasn't not recognize these kinds of phenomenons in the animated feature category. A rare movie that's both appreciated by fans and rewatched and has already become a classic film, and also appreciated by the critics. And then my final category, I think that Sinners is going to win for Best Original Score. And I did that in part because I was looking at the betting odds. And what was notable is that this has the same betting odds as something like an Avatar and VFX. So I want to include at least one category here that has the highest likelihood of happening, at least according to the odds, the Vegas, the books, and see if that's going to ultimately help us. And maybe I was thinking about debating score, but in the same way, I'm kind of making this video to tell you, do not debate score. It will be Ludwig Göransson for Sinners because the gambling books also said the same thing. I'm trying to kind of glean some insight there for the first time this year and see if we can kind of get in edges that way. Same thing, like I mentioned, the same odds, Ludwig Göransson to win for Best Score as something like Avatar in VFX. And I even think there's an outside possibility that something like F1 wins for VFX. Whereas for something like Score, it does seem to be the kind of clear and away front runner. Ludwig Göransson is a 2-time winner, well appreciated in this category. So you may go, oh, he's already won a couple times. They're going to go with Johnny Greenwood, right? Well, they don't necessarily do that. Ask 2-time winner Alexander Desplat, or 2-time winner Hans Zimmer, or 5-time winner John Williams. If they like you, oftentimes they will reward you with multiple Oscars. In particular, now that this is expanded to the entire Academy, I don't think they're looking at the fact of like, oh, we just gave Ludwig a couple of Oscars, because they may not even be noticing that it is Ludwig Göransson. They may just think, oh yeah, it's Sinners, I like the score. And the movie is so intertwined with its score and with music in general. It reminds me of Ludwig's win for Black Panther back in 2018. When you think of Sinners, so much of the movie has to do with music. So you think of the kind of combination of that score with the original songs and the music of the film. So it's less so, oh, I remember this unique theme from Sinners, and more so, when I think of Sinners, I think of the overall music. And some of the other competitors, you think of Johnny Greenwood for One Battle After Another, Jerskin Fendrix for Begonia. I think very unique scores, but maybe not as traditional as some that will appeal to every member of the Academy. I think they may be in part too weird. And then you have Frankenstein and Hamlet, which are more traditional scores, and that maybe hurts it because it doesn't stand out on that side. So when I was looking at potential categories to include in this video, what I also thought about was Sinners just got 16 nominations, right? It's the most in Oscar history for a single film. So it's probably going to win a couple of those categories. What categories is that going to be? Cinematography, definitely, although I'm not 100% confident in that. I don't think it's going to get in for something like visual effects. I don't have it in makeup and hair. Production design is going to be a toss-up with something like Frankenstein as well. So I was trying to think of the categories that, okay, Sinners got 16 nominations. What's guaranteed going to win? And I felt that score was the most likelihood that it was going to win. So even if you could say maybe they love one bell after another, I encourage you to actually look at your full productions and go, well, if I don't include Sinners here, where do I include Sinners? Is it just original screenplay? Is that what's going to happen for a 16-time nominee? It's going to win one Oscar for Best Original Screenplay? I don't think so. I think the movie's going to do very well and pick up multiple Oscars. This one, though, being the most confident in because it has a 2-time winner, because the movie is so indebted to its music, its score, and because Ludwig Göransson so far has been winning everything, and the betting odds really seem to favor him. As much equal betting odds as something like Avatar and VFX, which I know a lot of people think is a complete lock. It has the best, highest likelihood of happening according to the books. The score for Ludwig Göransson. Don't overthink this category. I don't think it's probably going to be Ludwig. But that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on some of the potential guaranteed winners at the Oscars, which ones I missed, maybe some possible contenders. You think Rose Byrne is going to win for Best Actress? Any of that kind of stuff I'd love to hear in the comments down below. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.